Hey family, welcome back to the Imani Invests community. Today we need to have a very honest, very deep conversation about something that is happening all around us. But nobody in power wants to admit the truth about it. You've seen the headlines. You've heard the pundits and the business leaders on the news claiming that workers have just become lazy. They say an entire generation grew up soft, entitled, and unwilling to put in the effort. They claim people would rather sit at home and collect a check than build a career, and that the work ethic that built this country has simply evaporated into thin air. But I am here to tell you today that those headlines are dead wrong. People are not refusing to work, people are refusing to be exploited. There is a massive difference between those two things, and the gap between them is the most important economic story of our time. What we are seeing in 2026 is not an epidemic of laziness. It is a reckoning. It is a generation of workers who did everything they were supposed to do. They got the degrees, they showed up early, they stayed late, and they gave their best years to employers who gave almost nothing back. Then, they looked around and asked a question that our parents and grandparents were conditioned never to ask. Is this actually worth it? For tens of millions of people across the US, the UK, and Europe, the answer is a resounding no. And if you want to understand why, you have to look past the propaganda and look at the actual math of our modern lives. To understand why the work ethic feels broken, we have to remember what work was supposed to be. For most of human history, the deal was straightforward. You produced value, and you received value in return. There was a visible connection between your effort and your reward. If the farmer worked harder, he grew more food. If the craftsman refined his skill, he earned more for his trade. For about 30 years after the Second World War, that deal actually held up for the average person. Between the 1950s and the 1970s, workers experienced rising wages, job security, real benefits, and affordable housing. You could work a regular job, buy a home in your 20s, raise a family, and retire with dignity. That was the American dream. But then, that deal didn't just bend. It broke. It didn't happen by accident. And it wasn't inevitable. It happened through specific choices made by people in high places. And today, we are the first generation to grow up entirely inside that broken system. We don't remember a time when a single income could easily buy a house or when a company actually cared about your loyalty. We only know the version where you give everything and get back the bare minimum. And we are done pretending that it's okay. The first real reason people are stepping back is simple arithmetic. Work stopped paying enough to actually live on. Between 1979 and today, worker productivity in the US increased by about 65%. That means we are producing 65% more value every single hour than our parents did. But real wages for the bottom 80% of workers only grew by about 18% in that same time. Think about that gap. Where did all that extra wealth go? It didn't go to the people doing the work. It went to shareholders, to executives, and to capital owners. In 1979, a CEO made about 30 times what the average worker made. Today, they make over 350 times more. The workforce doubled its output, and the bosses got 12 times richer, while the workers got an 18% bump that inflation has already chewed up and spit out. In the UK, the story is even bleaker. Real wages for most people are lower today than they were in 2008. We've had nearly 20 years of zero real growth for the people, while executive pay has exploded. When you give everything to a system that returns nothing, the only rational response is to stop giving your soul to it. It's not laziness, it's self-preservation. The second reason for this shift is that the basic bargain has completely collapsed. In the past, people accepted lower wages because they were trading them for security. You had a job for life, a pension you could count on, and predictable hours. That security was worth something. But the gig economy has murdered that security. Millions of people are now on 0-hour contracts or classified as independent contractors. So companies can avoid paying benefits or providing stability. Whether you be driving for Uber, delivering for Amazon, or doing tasks on a laptop, the entire modern economy is built on workers who have no rights and no stability. Employers want all the flexibility and none of the obligation. They want you available the second they need you, but they want to be able to cut you the second they don't. That isn't a bargain, it's extraction. We are being treated like tools that get put back in the shed the moment the job is done. And family, we are tired of being treated like objects instead of human beings. On top of that, the actual cost of working has become unsustainable. To have a job, you usually have to live near the job. But housing costs in every major city have exploded to the point of being a mathematical impossibility. I see sisters in London or New York earning what sounds like a decent salary, but then 80% or even 100% of their take home pay goes straight to rent. That S before food, before the commute, and before childcare. When the cost of getting to work, staying dressed for work, and paying for someone to watch your kids adds up to more than the check you bring home, the logic of working harder falls apart. Why would you spend 90 minutes in traffic each way and sacrifice your entire evening for a net benefit that barely covers a bag of groceries? The people doing that math aren't lazy, they are the most rational people in the room, and we have to talk about the psychological toll. Work has become unbearable because the boundary between our jobs and our lives has vanished. The smartphone turned every hour into on-call hour. Emails at 11 p.m. and Slack messages at 7 a.m. are now expected. This always-on culture didn't come with always-on pay. It just came with stagnant wages and a side order of clinical burnout. In the US and the UK, over half of all work-related illness is now linked to stress, anxiety, and depression. A whole generation was raised to believe that work was the path to a good life, but they discovered that work, as it is structured right now, is actually a path to exhaustion and physical illness. People are looking at their health and their sanity and realizing that no job is worth losing your mind over, especially not one that doesn't even pay the rent. That's also the loss of purpose. Human beings don't just work for coins. We work for a sense of contribution. But we then moved from being craftsmen who could see the result of our labor to being cogs in an algorithmic machine. An Amazon warehouse worker isn't a person with a skill. They are a variable in an optimization function, monitored by cameras for their bathroom breaks. When the goal of a company is to extract maximum output for minimum cost, the work becomes meaningless. It becomes a cold transaction, and when the money stops being enough to survive, the transaction loses its value. People want respect, they want autonomy, and they want to feel like their effort matters. When you take those things away and replace them with surveillance and KPIs, people will vote with their feet. The pandemic was the final turning point because it proved that another way was finally possible. It showed us that we didn't need to be in an office 5 days a week. It gave millions of us the first quiet moment in our adult lives to actually think. And what many concluded was that work had taken too much and given too little. We realized we had sacrificed our relationships, our health, and our growth for careers that would replace us in a heartbeat if we dropped dead. The rise of the side hustle and the small buffers people saved during the lockdowns gave them just enough room to finally say no. For the first time in history, the desperation that employers relied on wasn't absolute. People realized they had options, and that changed the entire power dynamic. Perhaps the most heartbreaking reason is that we watched what happened to the generation before us. We watched our parents and our aunts give 30 or 40 years of loyal service to companies that laid them off the week before their pensions vested. We watched the 2008 crisis wipe out people who had done everything right. We saw that loyalty was a one-way street. Young workers aren't nihilists. They are observers. They've seen the evidence that the system will not honor its commitments, so they are responding by giving less of themselves to a system that has proven it will take without returning. They are prioritizing their families and their peace over an employer relationship that could vanish on a Tuesday morning. So, how do we fix this? It's not about office snacks, ping pong tables, or wellness apps. It's about restoring the basic bargain. It's about wages that actually grow when productivity grows. It's about housing policies that mean you can actually afford to live in the community where you work. It's about job security that gives you a reason to care about your company's future. Previous generations didn't work hard because they were better people. They worked hard because the deal was real. The house was achievable, the pension was funded, and the effort produced a result. If you want the work ethic back, you have to fix the deal. Because the work ethic didn't disappear, the reward for it did. History shows us that systems that destroy trust eventually lose the cooperation of the people. This work refusal is simply the withdrawal of cooperation from a system that has been violating our trust for decades. The truth is sitting right there in the statistics, the wage graphs, and the burnout surveys. The system stopped working for the workers, and the workers noticed. Family, I want you to remember that your worth is not defined by your job title or your productivity for someone else. Bottom line, building your own wealth, your own legacy, and your own exit plan is the only way to protect yourself in this environment. We have to be the ones to build a system that works for us. If this message resonated with you, hit that like button and join the Imani Invests family. Let's keep having these real conversations and building our own paths to freedom. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think the work ethic is dead, or is it the deal that's broken? I read every single one. Stay strong, stay intentional, and I'll see you in the next one.